this morning, we are starting a brand new Sunday message series based on Robert Brummett's book, Finding Yourself in Transition. This is the old cover. That's how long I've had it. Using Life's Changes for Spiritual Awakening. And I mean, I don't know if you can tell, but mine is like highlighted and underlined and doggy-eared and all kinds of good, delicious stuff. I love this book, and I know that you either do too or you will. So this is such a treat, and I'm just going to share with you right out of the gate here that this is a meat and potatoes kind of talk series, and so you may want to take some notes. You just might. And so today we are beginning part 1 with my talk titled, Must Everything Change? Well, spoiler alert, yes, everything must change. And I offer this even though it has been said that the only person who truly likes change is a wet baby. And you know, I'm sure that there's some truth in that. However, it seems to me that we could all use some help right now coping with the enormous amount of social and spiritual and economical changes that are going on in our world, as well as what's happening in our own personal lives as we continue to grow through this global pandemic together. In other words, we are all finding ourselves in transition in one way or another right now, and that's why this is just perfect timing for this spiritual teaching. Now, as I have shared many times over the years, this is my go-to book for change and transformation, and I love it so much that many of you already know that I recommend this book quite often to others. That's how good it is. And so this is especially true if you have found, or perhaps are finding yourself in a place where you're saying things or feeling things like, I feel like the bottom has dropped out of my life, or I don't even know who I am anymore, or I feel like my life is over. Now, if you have ever felt that way, or again, maybe you're feeling some degree of this right now, I want you to know that you are in the right place here. You are in the right place, and you are not alone, because maybe, just maybe, it's time to begin a new life, right? Can I get an amen? Can I get an amen? Let's see some amens in that chat box there. Time for a new life. And so my prayer for you over these next weeks as we dive into finding yourself in transition is that you will change the way you look at change, because change is inevitable. Change is unavoidable, and it is absolutely unpreventable. In fact, in the face of so much uncertainty right now, the one thing that you can count on for sure is that life will change. But the good news, the really, really, really good news, is that change is also a process. And so the more that you learn and the more that you understand about this process, the less you will resist it. And we all know that what we resist, we persist, right? What we resist persists. So the more that you know, the less you will resist it, and the more you will be able to navigate these life changes with ease and grace. And who doesn't want that, right? Now, This does not mean that there won't be some struggles at time with change, but it does mean that you will have a new awareness now that can help guide you through these changes and help you navigate these changes that are kind of being thrust upon you, right? So a few examples of the triggering types of events that we're talking about here could be, right? Could be the end of a relationship, right? Could be, like a breakup or a divorce. Could be a serious illness of some kind. Could be a financial loss or maybe loss of a job. Certainly could be the death of a loved one, which of course could be a parent or a spouse or maybe a child or a sibling or even a good friend, or any number of unexpected types of events, like dun dun dun, a global pandemic. Yeah, like that. And so this brings me right here to a place where I want to ask you to just pause for a moment. I want you to just kind of hit that pause button for a few minutes, because before we go any further, I want to lay some groundwork for how the universe works. Something easy. Now, this part is not in Robert's book, but it's really important for you to remember that your life succeeds and works only to the extent with which it is in alignment with with spiritual principles that guide the universe. So let me just say that again. Your life succeeds and works only to the extent with which it is in alignment with spiritual principles that guide the universe. And so unity certainly doesn't have the monopoly on truth, of course, and I say truth with a capital T. We respect the many paths to God, or as you often hear me say, we respect the paths to enlightenment. I say that because there's a lot of blood shed in the name of God, right? Which has nothing to do with God. But we respect these many paths to enlightenment. We believe in one presence and one power. We call that God the Good. And included in this one presence and one power is the understanding that there is a divine intelligence. There is a God intelligence in the natural order of things. For instance, look at how an embryo becomes a baby, or how the acorn becomes the oak tree, or how a flower bud blossoms, right? There is a divine intelligence, there is a guidance system that is inherently causing these things to unfold in a very natural way. And there is a reason to make a distinction between this kind of intelligence as divine, right? So there's a difference between this kind of intelligence that causes the embryo to become a baby, that causes the acorn to become the oak tree, that causes a flower bud to blossom, between that and our human intelligence. I mean, this is why we say we are spiritual beings having a human experience, because it is the same divine intelligence that has also programmed the way that our bodies work, the way that our life can work. The divine design is there, but it's up to us through our free will as to how we choose to live this divine design and how we choose to allow it to develop and cultivate. Are you with me? Can I get an amen? And so One thing that all of these things have in common, of course, as the embryo becomes the baby, as the acorn becomes the oak tree, as the flower bud becomes a blossom, the one thing that they all have in common is change, particularly change toward growth. Now, I'm talking about the kind of change toward growth that allows something to become its next best, greatest thing in that natural cycle, that it's continually moving and growing toward its greatest expression of potential. And so just think about this ever so gently in the back of your mind. With the birth of a baby, there are labor pains. With the acorn, the shell must crack. And with the flower bud, it must allow itself, it must be willing to open and blossom. It can't stay tight in the bud. It has to open and blossom. And so the spiritual view of the universe is that this divine intelligence is always working within you. It is never not available to you. It is never not working. Amen? Amen. And so, taking all of this in, I have a question for you this morning. And my question for you is this: what is your spiritual view based on? What is your spiritual view based on? In other words, think of it this way. We say life is consciousness, right? And so your level of consciousness, your level of awareness, your level of attentiveness absolutely influences your level of responsiveness. Absolutely, there is a cause and effect relationship there. Now, I really, really like the metaphor that Carolyn Mays offers us about levels of consciousness. And so I want to share that with you. I hope you are familiar with Carolyn Mays. Her last name is spelled M-Y-S-S. Of course, you can find her. I think she's like a 5-time New York Times bestselling author, amazing teacher around energy and energy medicine. And so anyway, I love this metaphor. So Carolyn uses the idea of a 12-story building. Now, I want you to imagine that you live in this 12-story building, but you are living on the first floor, and you are not ever allowed to leave that first floor, or you feel stuck in that first floor condo, let's say. And so all you know is what you hear from the outside, the city noises. That's all you were able to hear. And however, that's on the first floor. But up on the top floor, the individual living there has a completely different panoramic penthouse purview of a beautiful world that includes a beautiful sky, includes mountains, includes lakes, includes being able to see green grass, right? But here's the thing, you would never know on that first floor that while you're living there on your first floor, only hearing sounds, only knowing what is coming from the outside in, that you actually share the same address as the person on the penthouse. So if you think of each floor as a level of consciousness, you have to ask yourself, if you are willing to do whatever you have to do to get in that elevator, to go up to the penthouse so that you can expand your view, so that you can expand your understanding of spirituality, so that you can expand your ideas about God, so that you can just see that there is always a bigger picture. Whew. And so if you leave with nothing else today, my prayer for you is that you will really start to catch this idea. There is no way, in no shape or form, that we are trying to spiritually bypass change. We're not trying to live a challenge-free life. That is not what we are here for. That's just not possible. What we're trying to do is to cultivate an inner dialogue so that our perceptions will shift, so that we can come into spiritual alignment with the God of our understanding, so that we don't always feel like we're pushing a 1,000,000-pound boulder up a hill. Right? I mean, that's exhausting. So we want to have a direct encounter with life. We want to be fully present for changes, and we want to live to tell the story. So there's a wonderful Chinese proverb that says, when the winds of change blow, some people build walls and others build windmills. And so you may want to ask yourself, like, well, how am I showing up around change? How am I showing up in the midst of this pandemic? Who do I want to be on the other side of this? In other words, are you building walls of resistance, or are you building windmills? Now, Dr. Maya Angelou said it this way: if you don't like something, change it. And if you can't change it, then change your attitude. In other words, change your thinking. Change the way you look at change. Let's say that together. Change the way you look at change. I change the way I look at change. Let's say that. I change the way I look at change. And so I share this with you from Maya Angelou because at the heart of her wisdom here is the understanding that it takes deep spiritual maturity to be able to ask yourself, what's in this situation for me, instead of why is this happening to me, right? Do you hear the difference? Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Ask, what's in this for me? And so some of the challenges that are going on with people right now, of course, is a lot of fear and worry. I mean, right now, fear and worry are just running wild in the hearts and minds of so many people as we grow through this global pandemic together. And so I don't know if you've noticed, but certainly, you know, most of the media outlets are constantly broadcasting the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario. But that's not for you. That is not for you. This is why truly, and I want you to hear me, I want you to hear me here. This is why truly there is no greater virus than fear. There's no greater virus than fear. Yes, stay at home. Yes, trust Allah, trust God, but tie up your camel, right? Yes, trust everyone, but brand your cattle, right? Be wise, take precautions, shelter in place. Yes, But do understand the way the universe works. The law of mind action does not care what you say you want. The law of mind action is only interested in what you are giving your attention to and what you are focusing on. And so if you are interested in those things that you don't want in your world, if that's where you're putting your focus, if that's where you're putting your attention, then that is what you are creating and what you are drawing to you. And so instead of asking, what does this pandemic mean? Put your focus on the meaning that you are giving it, right? Put your focus on transcending this challenge with ease and grace and becoming the greater version of yourself. Put your focus on envisioning the best possible outcome. There is always a best possible outcome. So put your focus on that, not the worst scenario. Put your focus on the best possible outcome. And you don't even have to know exactly what that is, because we know that the best prayer is this or something better, God. This or something better. Amen? Amen. By the way, did you happen to hear about this amazing woman in the UK? Her name is Connie Titchen, 106 years old. She was released from the hospital just a few days ago, having fully recovered from coronavirus. 106. Now, you know that has a special place in my heart because my Dynamo Doris, my grandmother, lived to 106. So isn't that amazing? Isn't that great news? Now, also in the news in the last couple of days, the World Health Organization announced that there are at least 70 coronavirus vaccines that are currently in development, and 3 of them are already being tested in human clinical trials. And so let us be about the business of moving toward reframing and reprogramming the potential, the divine intelligence in the best possible outcome. Now, I also don't want to make light of this process, because I know that there are times when we naturally feel some doubt and some fear and some worry, but we don't want to stay there, right? Because these times of transition are crucial. And this is why in his book, Robert compares them to a rite of passage, because they offer an opportunity for a breakthrough to a new life and a new way of thinking, for an opportunity for us to change the way we look at change. And so in many ways, a whole new way to look at things is very much like being born again. Yes, you heard me say that. Because isn't transformation, isn't that really about being born again? Isn't it? Now, I think one of the best examples of how this can go terribly pear-shaped, as the British would say, how it can go wrong, is found in this story about a gardener who saw a beautiful butterfly struggling to break out of its cocoon one day. And so he decided, in his gardening wisdom, that he was going to help this butterfly make its transformation by cutting a little hole, by cutting a little slit in the actual cocoon. Well, the butterfly tumbled out of the cocoon onto the ground easy enough. But sadly, it was never going to fly, because even though this gardener was well-meaning, actually, he failed to realize that being in the cocoon, being in the struggle of the goop, being in the chrysalis was an inherent part of becoming the butterfly. And so in his effort to rush the process by asserting his will into this situation, he deprived this butterfly of the very thing, the process of transition and transformation that would allow it to live to its full potential and fly. And so the core teaching here is this: don't screw up the process, right? Don't screw up the process by rushing it. Now, some of you know that that is like my favorite ministerial advice. Just don't screw it up, right? Just stay on the path. Enough will be there for you to navigate. So trust the divine intelligence, the God intelligence that is inherently within you and inherently within each circumstance. Trust what's happening in the goop. And the cool thing about this is that practicing just this one principle alone is going to help give birth to your transformation. You see, transformation and transition, let's say transition, actually begins with an ending and ends with a new beginning. That's the process. So let me say that again. A transition begins with the ending of something and then ends with a new beginning, right? And we tend to believe that the phase of endings is immediately followed by a new beginning, but no. This isn't necessarily so. And so Robert explains that there is a stage in between the ending and the new beginning, and that, my dear ones, in the middle is the void. The void. Now, this is a place where, we might feel kind of lost, or like we're roaming in the wilderness, or like, my goodness, how many times can we go around that mountain? We might feel lost in our way. I mean, have you ever felt that way? I sure have. Many times. I have been there, and sometimes I am there. And you might be there right now. And if you are, I just want you to know that you are not alone. And so with each transition, we see these three stages: endings, the void, and new beginnings. Now, we're going to talk a lot more about these stages later in the series, but for now, I just want you to hear that these stages, they all occur either by choice, right, or the ones that are thrust upon us. These stages happen whether they're the ones that we think we can predict, or whether they're the ones that appear to be unwelcomed. And this is especially true for those transitions that are huge life, major changes. And I mentioned some of those earlier. And so as we start to come to a close here, I want to encourage you to really think about the idea of life as a series of transitions, and that each one begins with an ending of something and then ends with a new beginning. And I want to encourage you to become even more aware of just how you are showing up for these changes in your life. Are you willing to transform? I mean, are you willing? Are you willing to transform? And by transform, I mean real transformation, right? Are you, willing to start to understand it? You're not here to mimic someone else. You're not here to try to be anyone else. You are here to grow into your greatest expression, your greatest God potential that is inherently in you. So just think about this, the butterfly has absolutely no resemblance whatsoever to the caterpillar. And you, my sweet one, are a beautiful butterfly. And so I leave you with this from the Tao Te Ching. Lao Tzu said, if you want to awaken all of humanity, then awaken all of yourself. If you want to eliminate the suffering in the world, then eliminate all that is dark and negative in yourself. Truly, the greatest gift that you have to give is that of your own transformation. And so, must everything change? You're darn tootin'. You say you want a transformation. Well, And so this ends our meat and potatoes message for today. Thank you, and God bless you.